First up, I just want to start with some of the trends that I'm seeing. I'm going to talk through sort of the behaviors that I'm seeing in the market, and I think what that leads to in the way in which we structure communication. So the first one, rather obviously, is oversupply. I'll chuck another statistic at you from, as well as the ones that you heard earlier on. You're 475 times more likely to survive an airline accident than you are to click on a banner ad. So that just gives you a sense of the huge amount of content that's out there. And look at any of the infographics on the amount of posts, the amount of video content per minute. You can see, we're in a highly competitive environment to get our content seen, let alone engaged with. And the thing that surprises me within that is that we're all consumers of content. We go home, we've got personal interests, we go online, we work our way around the digital environment, and we act like a consumer. And then we forget all of those lessons, and we go to work, and we behave like a marketeer. And I would say the first point that I'd like to make is that we need to get rid of behaving like a marketeer and behave like a consumer of content. So I would argue not necessarily acting like a media company, but act like your audience. Who are they? Why do they get excited about content? What type of content do they get excited about? And think like that rather than your professional role. The next is technological, and we've heard a little bit about the battle between the algorithm developers and the ad blockers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I mean, you could say that we've been filtering content for quite a few decades now. It probably started with an invention called the kettle. When we went to make a cup of tea in the middle of Coronation Street, we've moved through TiVo, we've moved through Sky Plus, time-shifted content. I mean, I can't remember the last time I watched, probably with the exception of Downton. I can't remember the last time that I really sat through live content. That iteration around iOS 9, around the ad blockers, is really just the latest in a long line of developments to get rid of stuff that we don't want and don't value, and move to stuff that we do like and do value. So I guess my point there is, if you want people to engage with your content, don't complain that they're skipping it, produce better content. And I think you heard some of that this morning or earlier this afternoon as well. And even in today's news, I don't know if you saw, but Google announced that they were going to work with mobile advertisers to try and stop ad blocking, but only on condition that the advertising improved and that the user experience improved. And I think that really is at the center of the behaviors that we as marketeers and we as integrated communicators need to think about. It's putting the user first and being able to think about the content that they value. Within the regulatory space, you heard from Nick, I think just before the break, around some of the legal cases that are going on. I believe that privacy, the approach to the way in which we treat data, data regulation, what the legislators and regulators are up to, is going to be the single biggest impact on our profession over the next 5 to 10 years. So for all of the technological advancements, it's really that will begin to dictate how we're allowed to address all of the data that we've got at our disposal. Earlier this week, the EU announced a data transfer pact, or banned a data transfer pact, which essentially banned companies from moving data out of the EU and into the US. Now, that's affecting about 4,500 companies at the moment, some of them very large. My view is that is the very start of the EU getting much more aggressive and much more active about the way in which data is viewed, privacy online is viewed, and the way in which we as marketeers need to develop a much greater sense of responsibility about how we treat that data. So we've talked, I think, a lot about the speed of social and the speed of digital. And one of the things that I would agree again with Nick is that it's the combined team of creative and campaign and data that is most effective. Each each autumn, or autumn into Christmas, we run a research program which really looks at the retail battle for Christmas. And as you might imagine, there's a number of different brands in there. They all move through the different campaigns. And the single biggest impact between the brands that succeed and the ones that really are the also-rans is the ability to be responsive, the ability to react to what, firstly, to external events and the way in which you bring external events into your campaign. And then secondly, the way in which you respond individually to customers that have already said that they want to engage with your brand. And it's really that responsiveness that's the separation. I accept there's a legal risk, but if we're not engaging in that way, customers very quickly switch off. And the impact of that is that we're really seeing a lot of behavioral changes. Yes, consumers are more savvy, they're more opinionated, they're more fickle, they are impatient consumers of content, and they tend to consume a lot of our content in between other moments, in between moments when they're connecting with friends, when they're connecting on their social platform of choice. And you've got to insert yourself into those moments, and that's becoming increasingly difficult, especially in an age where we're seeing the rise of the micro network and the private network. Even in our setup of our profiles, we're increasingly excluding either people or brands that we don't want. So it's this, I think, authenticity that we're looking for, the realism in the interaction, especially in an increasingly viral world, that I think is driving a lot of this. And I think it's that permission-based marketing that we need to move to. So the way I look at it is that it's sort of the idea of being a great dinner party guest. That if we want to be successful in the way in which we interact with our customers, then arrive with a gift. Now, that might be some humor, it might be a nice piece of content, it might be some information, or some way that you begin the interaction, but it's you giving first. And I think the other main point that I would bring out of this slide is that idea that you are the guest and your customer is the host of the party. And far too often, brands get that the wrong way round. They believe that their customers orbit around them. In fact, it's entirely the other way around. We orbit around our customers, and we're in competition with a huge amount of other brands that those customers allow into their life. So we need to behave like a guest. Yes, tell your stories, but also help other brands tell their stories. Allow other brands to help tell your stories. Allow your customers to tell your story. And I think the other part of that is quickly adapting to what you hear, and it's that responsiveness that's needed. So speed, involvement, dialogue, conversation, it's that many-layered interaction that I think can get very lost in some of the interactions that we're moving towards. And it's building on those interactions that I think becomes incredibly important. Influence isn't a singular event. It's something that you build upon. It's something that has a path and an evolution. And I think too often we forget about that. So where next? 5 parting thoughts. We've got a huge amount of data, yes, but I think too often we see gobs of data that don't actually lead to insight. And I think too often that's because we end up doing all of that research from our desk. I think the important part is getting out to meet your audience, to speak with them, to understand not only what they do, but the psychographic of it. Why do they commit that action? What is it that's driving them? That then can lead you through to insight. The next part is really that idea of having a conversation, understanding that interaction and being able to engage and responsive enough to engage. I think we can all agree that we're in an integrated future, but that also has for I guess for everyone in the room, I was going to say the agency guys in the room, it has a huge implication for the way in which we go to market. I think we've got to get much better at playing in the sandbox together. I think we've got to be able to partner much more effectively, because the only certainty is, as you think about all of the technology that you've seen today and all of the other startups, all of the other technology that's out there, the only certainty is that you likely won't have all of the capabilities that you need in order to deliver what your customer requires at that point. So the business acumen of being able to partner with a number of other brands is going to become critical to success and to survival. I made the point about being human, not a marketeer. I think that is absolutely critical to where we need to be. And I would say that the last point about piracy, we can complain all we want, but filtering is here. It will continue to be here. If legislation comes in, then consumers will find a way around it. And it's really up to us as marketeers to be relevant, to be engaged, and to find a way to let customers into their lives. If we start from the position which is how do we block them doing what they want to do, they will naturally find another way to do what they want to do. We have to start from a different position, which is give them what they want. Thank you.